Hey, what's up, you freaks? Just want to take a quick second before this episode and thank the 2, possibly 3 of you out there that are listening to us on a weekly basis. We appreciate it. Now put your diapies on and get ready for Downright Frightening, episode 4.
Whoa! So this is Radio Land, huh?
You got any idea how much blood jets out of a guy's neck in this explosions?
Are you weird?
Yes, I am weird.
Do you know what the most attractive thing in the world is? It's here.
Well, what have we fucking here? Episode 4, a little bit earlier than usual. We just could not wait to get back in between your ears and into your brain. Hello, Cole. How are you on this fine Thursday afternoon?
I am good. Ready to get this thing kicked off and talk about a really goofy yet really good movie.
If you haven't guessed already by some of the hints that we've dropped, the goofy and fun movie that Brother Cole is referencing is the 1982 classic Creepshow, which was rated R and is a movie that centers around 5 terrifying stories for the price of one. Directed by George Romero and written by Stephen King, it stars Hal Holbrook, Leslie Nielsen, Adrienne Barbeau, and the one and only Tom fucking Atkins in an uncredited role of Stan the Dad. There's actually a lot of great actors throughout this movie, even though they aren't at the top of the list, including Tom Savini, the king of monster makeup, Ed Harris, Ted Danson, and of course, Stephen King as poor Jordy Verrill in the segment, The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. Let's get right down to it and check out the trailer and find out just how they squeezed all this juicy goodness into one short spot.
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo. And the creator of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. You'll scream at ghastly ghouls. Cringe at weird kids. And shiver at the doings of evil doctors.
This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill.
Creepshow will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
You know, it's really a shame that we can't show you this trailer because I really, really enjoy it. I think visually it's stunning. It's got a little bit of a comic book vibe, and I would highly recommend you going and checking it out on YouTube. They did a really good job of teasing the movie, considering how much of the story content they were able to squeeze into a really, really short spot. But like I said, they really, really squeezed in those 5 terrifying tales appropriately. This is a little bit of a long review because it is 5 stories. So we're going to just go right at it head first and kick it off. This is a movie that I have in my collection. I've seen it dozens and dozens of times, but no offense, it is just not my favorite. I enjoy it every time I watch it, but there's a lot of movies that are ahead of it when it comes to what I'm going to be watching. One of our first and few fans out there, aka Baby Bossier on the gram, that's BABYBOSSIER. That's my main man. He loves this movie, and that's pretty much the reason why I squeeze it in so early in the episode list. Justin is one of the premier tattoo artists in Denver, CO, and he and his wife own the Beard Inn Lady in Denver. You can also check them out on IG at the Beard Inn Lady. So, 5 stories, all based on a comic strip being read by this sweet little young innocent child who just happens to have the misfortune of having a mildly abusive father, aka Tom Atkins.
This speaking of which, it's funny because the Joe, the one that plays Billy, is actually Stephen King's son.
Oh, cool. I did not know that. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And oddly enough, an entire movie that is kind of focused on a really shitty father with an epic mustache. The first segment in the movie is Father's Day, about another terrible father. In fact, this father was an extremely rich asshole that was murdered by his daughter with a ashtray on Father's Day. And now, many years later, the family has all gathered to celebrate Father's Day, which is strange because he's dead, but he starts murdering them one by one, and it's a really, really creepy little way to start the movie off. But it does contain some of the most epically terrible dancing performed by none other than Ed Harris. Really, really bad. And it actually contains my favorite line of the movie, which is kind of the central theme of the story, which is that the dead dad just wants his cake for Father's Day. So he runs around saying, "I want my cake. It's Father's Day." So a little tradition around my house is that on Father's Day, I run around chasing my kids saying, "I want my cake. It's Father's Day."
This is a really weird way to begin the whole setup, but it was a strange tale, but I liked it. I liked that the old lady's flying up the road, smoking her Black and Mild, just hauling butt up this road while everybody's waiting on her. You know, it was really funny, but the whole story itself was just weird but I like the way that it ended. I like the whole piece with the cake, the head cake, and all that. I mean, it was really good.
I want my cake. It's really, this is a really important piece to this movie, because it sets the stage and it sets the tone kind of for like the whole way the whole movie plays out, and how they do some of the witty imagination type stuff, and like going into memories and like showing how things were and like flashbacks, and so it all kind of has like this same vibe that starts very early on in this first segment, Father's Day. So it's pretty good little story. You can't expect a whole lot from these stories when you consider that it's 5 stories all wrapped up into 2 hours. So props on that one. Interesting enough for me to go on to the next one. Of course, the first time I saw it. But anyway, next we've got the lonesome death of young Jordy Verrill. Very, very sad tale. Poor guy, he thinks he's going to strike it rich because a meteor strikes his farm, and then, come to find out he's just going to end up becoming the Grinch.
Yeah, the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill, or as I like to call it, the prequel to how the Grinch stole Christmas. And that's what I kept thinking when I was watching this. When he wakes up and he's got this beard, I'm like, This dude's turning into the Grinch, and he's obviously growing the dankest weed in the county.
Darn. So Stephen King plays an extremely simple yet lovable character that ends up facing a very, very sad and a very, very lonely demise. It's incredibly hard for me to pick a favorite story out of the five, but if I had to, this would be it. I saw this movie very early in life, and this was the scene that I remembered years later when I watched it for the first, for the real first time. This was the one story that I remembered just about 99% of. It's really creepy to me because I feel like it really effectively portrays, just how quickly situations can go from weird to wonderful to absolutely god awful. And out of all the stories, this is the one that like really makes me think like, Jesus Christ, like, not that there's meteors striking the backyards of every home in America that have disgusting dew that turns you into the Grinch, but things happen all the time that don't start out the way that they seem, and they end up ending in a very, very, very terrible way. And this is just a really, really good illustration of that.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting is like this story here is actually the first time that Stephen King, who played Jordy Verrill, it's the first time he ever appeared in one of his own creations.
Yep. And as many of you know, after this, he liked to make little cameos and just dip in and dip out of his movies really quickly. But this is definitely the one that kicked it all off, and definitely the one that he has the biggest, as far as I can recall, the one that he has the biggest role in. Coming in third is Something to Tide You Over. This one is an interesting one. Essentially, this really rich and dubious character, played oddly enough by Leslie Nielsen, finds out that his gold-digging honey is getting boned down by this young, dapper Ted Danson. Now, we don't get to see Ted dance in the movie, but I feel like if we had a dance-off between Ted Danson and Ed Harris circa the time of this movie being made, Ted Danson's going to win hands down. Probably why he was hooking up with Leslie Nielsen's wife. Anyway, so Leslie Nielsen finds out that this is going on, and he decides that the best course of action is going to be to bury his wife and her lover in the sand, Motel Hell style, and wait for the tide to come in and drown them. But the really creepy part is that he wants to watch the whole thing on a closed circuit television. Really weird stuff. It's probably a sexual fantasy of his somewhere buried deep down in there. But this one really ramps up the creep factor. And it just, again, really leaves you thinking how terrible it would be to be a victim of drowning, knowing that it was coming. So not an accidental drowning where it happens really quick, but being in a situation where you know that at the end of the day, your lungs are going to fill with water and you're going to suffocate.
Oh, what's worse? What's worse is like when Ted Danson is buried up to his neck. He puts a TV down in front of him so he can watch her get drowned the exact same way, but she's at like a further stage than he's at. Right. So he's seeing what's going to happen to him before it actually happens to him and seeing how bad it's going to be for him.
Yeah, like I said, it really ramps up the creep factor on that one. There's a lot of things that you could be left to ponder with on that one. And it's really, really interesting because Leslie Nielsen is not a horrific prick by all accounts. So to see him in that role after 50 billion Naked Gun movies that came out over the last 30 years, it was odd and interesting. But apparently, he didn't completely leave his sense of humor at home because The cast and crew were both reported to have said that he carried a fart machine in his pocket the whole time, and they didn't know it. So they just thought he was like ripping ass all over the place. And but come to find out, it was a fart machine. So
Muscusi.
yeah, pretty awesome. Really adds, knowing that really adds to that segment as a whole. Next, we have The Crate, which is just, they get weirder. I feel like they get weirder and weirder and weirder as the movie goes on. And this one stars one of my favorite actors. I don't know why. He's just always kind of right in the middle of some weird shit, and that's the one and only Mr. Hal Holbrook. And so in this one, basically, heartwarming story of this lovable little beast named Fluffy, appropriately named by his creator, I might add, Tom Savini, again the king of monster makeup. But Fluffy is a hairy, sort of toothy type of guy. He's been living under a crate for about 150, maybe 160 years, and he's been in this crate and underneath the stairs. It's bizarre. So this crate's under these stairs in a Maine university, and a janitor accidentally opens it, and next thing you know, Fluffy is feasting on folks, and people are feeding their bitchy wives to him, and it's got some imagination death scenes. Like it's just all over the place. But there's a really interesting point in this segment, and it could be nothing, but ever since the first time that I saw this movie as an adult, and I really understood horror and who a lot of the directors were and things like that, for some reason this part just really stuck out to me. And homework time, if anybody can explain it, I would appreciate it. But anyway, on the crate, it says, ship to Horlicks University via Julia Carpenter, Arctic Expedition, June 19th, 1834. All in all, not a weird thing, but just going a little bit deeper on it, I want to know, why is the university called Horlicks? It's not spelt like horror licks, but it reads that way. Who is Julia Carpenter? Is that a shot at John Carpenter? It's just there's a lot of stuff going on there. So another weird thing is, if it is a shot at John Carpenter, and if Julia Carpenter is assumed to be his wife, and she's a Horlick, catch this. At that time, John Carpenter was married to the amazingly beautiful Adrienne Barbeau, who plays Wilma, who gets eaten by Fluffy. So weird, I know, but if anybody knows the true deets behind that, please let us know at downrightpodcast@gmail.com. We would appreciate it.
It's like a conspiracy theory within the movie,
right? I mean, it's just
that's weird. I didn't even notice that when I watched it, but that's interesting for sure.
It could have said so many different things. It could have said nothing. It could have said, Arctic Expedition, 1834. It's weird.
Here's another thing I noticed in that movie. Was it just me, or did Fluffy? Was he only an upper torso? Did he not have any legs?
He's a very small little critter.
Like he looks huge when he's coming out of the box, but then you look at it, you're like, he ain't got no legs.
Yeah, he's a pint-sized terror for sure. Last, and let me just tell you, certainly least, is they're creeping up on you. I don't have a whole lot of interest in this particular portion of the movie. I think it's kind of boring. It's not interesting to me. So I'm going to really glaze it over. And if this is your favorite part of the movie, you need to seek help, because prior to this, there were 4 pretty decent stories. And if you're choosing this one as your number one, that's That's a you problem, not a me problem. So anyway, a total asswipe lives essentially in a clean room because he's a germ freak. The power goes out, and next thing you know, he's got a billion roaches in his house, and he ultimately dies. And then this was a really, really cheap shot, but they went there, and then they crawl out of his mouth and all that kind of shit. So typical. Whatever. Stupid story. I wish it wouldn't have been in there. And actually, oddly enough, Stephen King and George Romero were completely prepared to insert another story in the number 5 spot called The Hitchhiker. The Hitchhiker ends up being in Creepshow 2 and was a lot better than They're Creeping Up on You.
I gotta say, for me, this may have been the worst one, but at the same time, for me, it had the ultimate creep factor because there's one thing that and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's a ton of other people out there, but nothing is more disgusting to me than roaches. And I'm pretty sure I would have died instantly when they came out of that oatmeal box if not from a heart attack, then for sure from excess vomiting, because I can handle any type of gore, anything else, but roaches are for sure my breaking point. So this was like, out of all of them, like there is some seem kind of goofy to me, but this one was like truly like disgusting and terrible and just grossing me out the whole time.
Well, there's always someone that will fit into a market, and I think that They're Creeping Up on You has just found theirs. So congratulations to They're Creeping Up on You. You have your first fan. Did you know that this steaming pile of shit actually contained the most expensive effect in the movie, and that the roaches were 50 cents each?
Yes, that's insane to me because they used over 250,000 roaches, costing a grand total of $125,000. That's a lot of money for some roaches. But I mean that I've heard that, but I've also heard that that's exaggerated. That there was only like 20,000 roaches that came from a guy named Ray Mendez at the American Museum of Natural History, and that the rest of it were just like nuts and raisins. But watching it, there was a lot of living cockroaches. So I'm gonna go with that's actually the 50 cents a piece, and that many roaches has got to be it.
Yeah, just such a strange piece in the movie. And then, of course, the movie does wrap up. Outside of the stories, it wraps up with Billy, who has taken the opportunity of the crank ads in the back of the comic to get a voodoo doll and kill poor Tom Atkins.
Yeah.
Very sad ending for me. But it is what it is.
On a side note, speaking, I said earlier that Joe, who played Billy, was Stephen King's son. Stephen King actually took Joe with him I think they were going through a drive-through, and Joe still had on the bruise makeup and all that effects on him. And when the drive-through lady saw him, she called the police on him.
I mean, no offense, but Stephen King's always looked like a little bit of a pervert. So they probably did right, for the safety of the child. The sickening statistics for this dubious drama are as follows: 13 corpses, which is an incredibly large number for such a quirky little movie. It's possibly 15, but we are not 100% sure what happens at the very end of Father's Day. So we're going to go with the safe estimate. Always conservative, you know us. We're going to go with 13. One cake-starved, fucked up father. One decapitated delicious delight. One meteor strike. Two cheating beach-bound bimbos. And, as we just said, lots and lots and lots and one more lots of roaches. Disgusting. If you were listening to this, I'm going to assume that you've seen this great little flick. But if you have not, it comes in at a very even 120 minutes. And not watching it at this point is a bad idea. That's BAD, bad. Gore score of 5 for this one. There's a lot of death, but ultimately that does not equate to gore. There's some pretty nasty shit in this movie, and I really, really hate to go so low on a movie that had the work of the one and only Tom Savini, but it's just not a really, really gory movie. But that is in no way reflection of the quality, because without a doubt, CREEPSHOW is a classic. And now for the realities of horror. Since the fifth story is so damn gross, Mr. Jimenez, please enlighten us on the real story of Infestations.
Researching this when we decided to go with the infestation route. I've run across some pretty disturbing things that you can find on the internet involving infestation, but I found a couple that I thought I would go ahead and share. First, okay, so let's begin this tale of terror with a rather disturbing case. Okay, so 3 people were given the gift of life again when they found out that the organs they needed were finally available. Unfortunately, upon receiving said transplants, little did they know that they were also transplanting microsporidia.
Oh.
Which, if you don't know, is this microorganism that the donor was infected with, which when they transplanted these organs, ended up killing one and hospitalizing the 2 others. And one of the symptoms included swelling in the brain. So,
Jesus. So,
yeah.
I mean, so just to stop you right there for a second, that should have replaced, that story could have very easily replaced They're Creeping Up on You. That story would have much better fit the overall pace and tone and darkness of the movie, but I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be just the worst. I mean, you think that you're getting a renewed life with these new organs when you thought you were going to die, and then you die anyway because of the newer. I mean, that's terrible. But anyway, so let's get into a more common but equally disturbing case. In a remote farmhouse outside of Seaverville, Tennessee. That was the location for one of the largest cockroach infestations exterminator Ray Johnson had ever seen. It was so bad, in fact, that the health department actually had to come and evict the people from the house because they said it was literally raining German cockroaches from the ceiling. They had to tell these people to leave. Like they were okay with being in there. And the exterminator said it took them like 5 hours of just straight treatment just to get a handle on it. I mean, the floor was literally alive.
That's disgusting.
Yes.
You know, that really makes me wonder if Mr. Big Ray Johnson is any kin to the one and only Big Dick Johnson. Anyway.
So, what I think would be the most terrifying infestation is that of the mind, right? So imagine that you spend your life thinking that you have creatures crawling on and in your skin constantly. That really happens. Like that's a condition which is also known as delusional parasitosis and Ekbom syndrome. It revolves around what's known as formication. It's where people think that they have small insects crawling around them and under their skin, and which causes them to like pick and scratch and mutilate themselves in order to get rid of the bug that the brain is like telling them that they have that's not really there. And that right there has got to be the worst. Like, can you imagine like thinking that you have bugs crawling inside your skin all the time?
I mean, just imagine like you're living a normal life, everything's cool, you wake up one morning and you've got that.
Yeah, and matter of fact, if you want to catch a glimpse of that, you can check out this movie called Bug. It stars Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon. And if you haven't seen it, give it a watch. It's a psychological thriller about 2 people who develop delusional parasitosis and the damage that it does to them. And it's a crazy movie, and just the way that it happens. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
And that is a weird movie. And if you don't have the ability to pick it up and take a look at it, you can also go down to your local crack dealer and get a little bit of that rock. apparently that will also induce such feelings. Anyway, thank you, Brother Cole, for letting us know the true realities of horror. On this episode of What You Streamin', I be streaming the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 OG. Only this time, it was remastered under the supervision of the one and only Toby Hooper. I actually found this gem on Shudder. It's probably the 500th time I've seen this movie, but it was the first time that I had seen it in 4K and with the sound all remastered and everything. It was really, really good, and they did a really fantastic job on the remaster. But I really, more importantly than all of that, I just can't say enough good things about Shudder. At $4.99 a month, it's just got some amazing content, and it's got a growing library. Don't forget, of course, that's where the CREEPSHOW series is going to be airing, as well as the new Critters installment, which are both right around the corner. So if you haven't checked out Shudder, check it out. $4.99 a month. You can also do a 7-day free trial.
This episode, I'm streaming Honey Spider. It's a great low budget horror flick directed by John Hasty. John Hasty's also going to be directing another movie that's going to be coming out this fall, which I'm sure we'll be talking about, called Candy Corn. This one stars Katie Bearden and John Art. It's about a college student who's going through some family drama while away at college. She's celebrating her 21st birthday, which also falls on Halloween, and becomes the victim of a satanic group. Check it out. It's a short film. It's only about an hour and 16 minutes, which to me is quick for a movie, but it got everything in there, and it was a decent movie for a low budget film. But so check it out.
Awesome. On this episode of What's in Yo Box, it is Benchwarmers 2, Breaking Balls. Just kidding. That's a comedy. But after watching it, you very well may gouge your eyes out, thereby turning your life into a horror story. So who's wrong, you or me? No, really, it's Halloween 2018. At this point, if you haven't seen this latest installment, I really, really have to question your love for the genre. This is a really, really good movie. And of all of the Michael Myers Halloween movies, Halloween 2 is my favorite. But this particular movie even eliminates that one. It goes all the way back to the beginning, erases every other previous movie, and just is a pickup from the original. So this essentially becomes the new Halloween 2. It's confused a lot of people, mainly because they're stupid or they just don't read. So I've seen people asking, like, where's Josh Hartnett? I thought Laurie Strode had a son. And, where's Busta Rhymes? And, well, no more Busta Rhymes, no more Josh Hartnett, no more of that Thorne bullshit. Just Mikey Mike bringing the funk to Laurie Strode. All these years later. Settle in for the final gory conflict and pick it up, because it's in your box. It's rated R, and you can get it at a red box near you. So, I mean, come on.
Did you know that John Carpenter wanted the Halloween movies to originally be called The Babysitter Murders?
Yes.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Also, they released this movie on October 19, 2018, which is Michael Myers' birthday.
Oh, it's also my wife's birthday. So shout out to my wife, born on the same day as Mike Myers. Actually, I just need to clarify. When I say Mike Myers, I'm talking about my main man, the OG of the slasher, not Mike Myers from Wayne's World. So now that we're all clear on that, it's time for some of you all's favorite part of the podcast, which is where we end it. Just joking. It's actually where we tease the next episode. So put a lot of time and a lot of thought into this little teaser, if you will. And it is, what does the WWE and John Carpenter's The Thing have in common? Well, I guess you will have to wait to find out for the next episode. OKC, you ready to ride off into the sunset?
Yippee-okay.
All right. If you have any comments or feedback, please, in all seriousness, drop us a line at downrightpodcast@gmail.com. That's downrightpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you would like to see what we're doing in between episodes, you can like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Downright Podcast. Currently, this fantastic little upstart podcast can be found on YouTube, Podbean, and SoundCloud, and we are working diligently to get it up on Apple for all of you Apple fans. Thanks for tuning in. We love you. See you soon.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!